the conversation around the Whittaker family has gotten so loud, so chaotic, so emotionally charged that most people missed the update sitting right in front of them. And it's not small. It's not minor. It's not just another rumor recycled through the endless online debates. This one actually matters. It changes the entire way people should be looking at the situation, how the story has been unfolding, how outsiders have influenced it, and how the family themselves are reacting to the sudden shift in their world. It begins quietly, almost too quietly, with something people brushed off as just another post, but it wasn't. It was a shift in tone, a shift in who was talking, and a shift in what was finally being said out loud. Most people didn't catch it because it wasn't packaged in drama or clickbait. It wasn't delivered through a live stream meltdown or a finger-pointing rant. It came from a place of reflection, hesitation, and a kind of emotional fatigue that you do not get unless something real has changed behind the scenes. The update was hidden in a message that sounded simple on the surface, but when you dig into it, it reveals far more than anyone expected. The Whittaker family, after months of chaos, accusations, filming battles, money questions, and outsiders controlling their narrative, finally had their first internal break from the noise. The pause. A moment where the online world wasn't the one deciding how they should feel or what they should do. A moment where someone inside the situation admitted something nobody expected. Things are not what the internet thinks they are. For months, people online have argued, debated, and fought over the family, who's exploiting them, who's protecting them, who's lying, who's being truthful. But the update people missed is that one of the closest individuals connected to the Whittakers finally acknowledged that the public storyline, the one the internet has been running with, is incomplete. A piece is missing. A big one. There has always been a gap between what viewers see in videos and what actually happens once the cameras are shut off and the content creators drive away. That gap has now been addressed directly for the first time. And not in a denial. Not in an angry rant. But in a tone that sounded exhausted and candid. A tone that suggested the family has been dealing with far more behind the scenes, emotionally, legally, personally, than anyone broadcasting their situation has ever fully shared. And that raises the question, why haven't the creators been sharing it? And more importantly, why haven't viewers been told? The answer might be simple or it might be complicated. But what stands out is the honesty embedded in the update. The Whittakers themselves are overwhelmed. Not just by the separation issues, not just by APS involvement, not just by outsiders coming and going with cameras, but by the narrative that has been built around them, often without their full understanding or consent. The shocking update everyone missed wasn't about drama, it wasn't about money, and it wasn't about betrayals. It was about clarity, raw, unfiltered clarity, from someone close enough to the situation to finally say, things have gone too far. For once, the family's own emotional strain was centered in the discussion instead of the creators, the viewers, or the donation debates. And when this message surfaced, most people barely noticed because they were too focused on the latest feud or the newest accusation. But here's why that was a mistake. This update reveals how the Whittaker family views what has been happening around them. And their view is not the same as the viewers. It's not the same as the content creators. It's not the same as the constant online speculation. Their experience of this entire ordeal is shaped by confusion, fear, and uncertainty. They do not process events the same way the internet does. They do not interpret intentions the same way viewers do. They do not have the luxury of reading comment sections or dissecting live streams. They are living inside the storm, not watching it. And that is where the update becomes truly significant. For the first time, someone connected to the situation admitted that the whirlwind of online involvement has deeply affected the way the family feels about themselves, their home, and even the people who claim to be helping them. The internet has created characters out of real human beings. And while outsiders debate who is right or wrong, the family is simply trying to understand why everything around them changed so fast. Why strangers show up wanting something from them, why their home became a battleground for online personalities, and why they're constantly being spoken for instead of spoken to. Buried in the update was also a subtle but powerful acknowledgement. The family has started to withdraw emotionally from certain creators. They've begun to sense the shift in intentions, the shift in tone, the shift in energy. They can feel when someone is showing up to genuinely check on them versus when someone is showing up to film something profitable. And while they may not voice it the way you or I would, the feelings are still there. Confusion, unease, a sense of being used, a sense of being pulled apart for things that have nothing to do with their lives, their needs, or their well-being. This is the part everyone missed. This is the update that matters far more than who said what or who posted what live stream last night. Because it reveals a truth that the internet often overlooks. The Whittakers are not characters. They are not props. They are not a storyline. They are people caught in a situation they never asked for. And now, for the first time, that reality is being spoken out loud. The update also hinted that the involvement of multiple creators, Eric, Patrick, Brian, and others, has caused more emotional chaos for the Whittakers than anyone expected. Each creator brought a different agenda, a different personality, a different set of promises. And each one expected the family to adapt, understand, and cooperate. But the update reveals the truth. The family could not possibly understand all of it. They could not possibly navigate the politics between creators. They could not possibly comprehend contracts, content schedules, or donation management. They were caught in the middle of an online tug-of-war, and the people pulling the ropes were far more focused on their own narratives than the emotional impact on the family. And that impact is finally showing. The update hinted that communication inside the family has become strained. Not because they don't love each other, but because they're scared. They're confused. They're reacting to stress they don't have the tools to verbalize. And when things get overwhelming, people pull back, not because they want isolation, but because they don't know how to process the shift happening around them. This is where the update becomes heartbreaking. Someone connected to the family shared that their emotional well-being has been directly harmed by the chaos. That the separation of Timmy, Ray, and Lorraine took a heavier toll than videos or photos could ever show. That the ongoing public scrutiny has made Betty question her own role, her own value, her own ability to protect her family. That outsiders filming them made their home feel less like a home and more like a stage they never volunteered to be on. This is the part viewers missed because it wasn't shouted. It wasn't dramatic. It wasn't finger-pointing. It was honest. And what makes this update so shocking is that it reveals something most people never considered. The family's silence was not acceptance. It was survival. While the internet debated whether creators were good or bad, the family was just trying to keep their emotional balance. While people argued about money and contract breaches, the family was trying to understand why familiar faces disappeared or why promises were broken. While strangers online dissected every moment of their lives, the family was trying to cope with something nobody had fully explained to them. The world was watching them, judging them, interpreting them, without their permission or full understanding. That is the update. That is the shift. That is what everyone missed. And the person who delivered it didn't do it through hype or conflict. They did it through honesty, frustration, and concern. Concern for the Whittakers, not the creators, not the content, not the drama. This is the turning point in the story. Not because of something that happened on camera, but because of something that finally happened off camera. The Whittakers have reached a point where the emotional impact of the online attention can no longer be ignored or brushed aside. And the update makes it clear. The people closest to them are starting to speak out, not for themselves, but for the family. That alone shifts the entire narrative. Comment below. Let me know if you want part 2, and tell me what angle you want emphasized next. Internal family reactions, creator conflicts, or the behind-the-scenes truth no one has talked about yet. Hey everyone, before we get into the next part, I've got something special to share with you. If you're all about making your home smarter, cozier, and just a little bit more you, then you've got to check this out. We've partnered with trekbo.com, a place built for people who love clever solutions and everyday comfort. From wellness and skincare must-haves to smart home gadgets, heated gear, and lifestyle tech, Trekbo is packed with products that make life easier, warmer, and way more fun. I've personally picked some of my favorite finds, things that actually work, look great, and make your day smoother. Whether it's something to simplify your morning routine, help you unwind after a long day, or bring a little innovation into your home, you'll find it there. So before you scroll past, take a quick look at trekbo.com. Trust me, it's full of discoveries waiting to make your everyday better. Alright, now let's get back to it, because after this video, you're definitely going to want to explore what Trekbo has in store for the Whittaker household community. Past the internet wasn't just that the Whittaker family is emotionally overwhelmed, it's that their situation behind the scenes is far more tangled than viewers ever realized. And the update people ignored reveals something deeper. The outside forces influencing the family are not just content creators. They are agencies, social workers, distant relatives, old acquaintances, and people who suddenly decided to help once the family became a public phenomenon. But here's where the real shock sets in. For the first time, someone who has spoken directly with people involved in the case said that something has shifted inside APS itself, a shift that might finally explain the lack of clarity, the silence, and the confusing decisions surrounding Timmy, Ray, and Lorraine. And nobody noticed. Buried inside that update was a subtle line that most people scrolled right past. APS is reviewing the situation differently now that outside involvement has escalated. Those words matter more than viewers realize. What that means, what the update actually hinted, is that APS is now aware that this case has blown up online. They are aware that multiple creators are visiting the family. They are aware that donations have been mishandled. They are aware that the family's life became a public spectacle. They are aware that the situation isn't simply about living conditions. It's about exposure, exploitation, manipulation, and the mental impact of the digital spotlight on vulnerable adults. APS isn't just evaluating the home. They're evaluating the environment created around the home. And when that clicked, the entire picture changed. It explains the longer separation. It explains the delayed visitation. It explains the cautious communication. It explains the sudden interference. It explains the silence from most officials. They aren't only assessing safety, they are assessing influence. The update makes it clear, APS has realized that the Whittakers are caught in a social media tug-of-war that makes it nearly impossible to determine what's best for them. Every time someone films them, every time someone posts about them, every time someone uses their name for content, APS is forced to reconsider what kind of environment these adults are actually living in. This is not what creators or viewers expected. And that's exactly why this update went unnoticed. Everyone is busy arguing about who's lying, who's stealing, who's manipulating. Meanwhile, the agencies responsible for the family are stepping back and reassessing whether the public exposure itself is now part of the harm. And inside that reassessment sits the hardest truth of all. The Whittakers are not just dealing with separation. They are dealing with a complete lack of control over their own lives. From the moment their story went viral, decisions were made around them, not with them. Creators decided what was filmed. Viewers decided what was believed. Rumors decided what was shared. And APS decided what was safest. The family's actual voices were drowned out long before anyone realized it. This is the shocking part people missed. Someone close to the case said that APS is preparing to decide not just where Timmy, Ray, and Lorraine will live, but who will have access to them moving forward. That's why that update matters. That's why the tone changed. That's why everything suddenly feels quieter. APS is no longer treating this as a basic welfare case. They are treating it as a case complicated by the involvement of outsiders. Outsiders who might be influencing the family emotionally, financially, or socially. And the Whittakers are starting to feel the weight of that shift. According to the update, Betty has been confused about why her updates feel different, why the communication from workers has slowed down, and why certain conversations seem guarded now. She doesn't fully understand APS procedures, and she certainly doesn't understand the politics surrounding online exposure. But she does understand when the atmosphere changes, and it has. She feels it. And that emotional shift inside the family is finally being spoken out loud. One part of the update described Betty waking up every morning wondering if she'll get a phone call that changes everything, but instead, she gets silence. She wonders whether the separation will last longer because of things she didn't do and didn't understand. And people close to her say she has started blaming herself, even though no one has explained anything clearly enough for her to make sense of it. On the other side of the state, the update suggested that Timmy has become withdrawn in ways he wasn't before. That he is smiling on the outside, but confused internally. The update described him as trying to adapt to routines that feel unfamiliar. It mentioned that caretakers say he sometimes talks about home, even though he doesn't completely understand where home has gone. That's the part viewers never see. Behind the scenes, the separation is causing emotional shifts that are deep, quiet, and painful. The family may not communicate the way typical households do, but they feel everything. They feel absence. They feel disruption. They feel the shock of sudden change. And the update spelled it out. This separation is affecting them far more intensely than the internet realizes. But here's the twist. The update also revealed that APS is not ignoring the family's emotional distress. In fact, it's the reason the case is taking longer. APS is being cautious, not because they don't care, but because they have to sort through layers of influence that didn't exist before. Filming, contracts, donations, creators fighting, creators disappearing, creators reappearing, people claiming to speak for the family, people claiming to defend the family, people claiming ownership of the family's story. APS has to determine what is real and what is noise. And someone connected to the case finally said it plainly: the noise has gotten too loud. Too loud for APS. Too loud for the family. Too loud for anyone to pretend the situation is simple anymore. That's why this update is so critical and why almost nobody caught it. It wasn't dramatic. It wasn't emotional. It wasn't shouted in a live stream. It wasn't weaponized in a feud. It was quietly stated. The Whittakers case has officially become more complicated than anyone expected, and the agencies involved are shifting their approach because of the impact of outside forces. But here's where the update becomes even more shocking. Someone stated that APS is now actively questioning whether certain creators' involvement harmed the family emotionally or financially. That opens the door to something no one anticipated. APS may start asking for records, communications, contracts, and financial statements from the people who filmed the family. If that happens, the entire public narrative will change overnight. And while viewers are arguing about who promised what or who failed to deliver, APS is quietly building a picture of the entire situation, one that includes the creators, the family, and the viewers' reactions. This is the part everyone missed because it was hidden beneath casual language. APS is not just monitoring the family. APS is monitoring the fallout created around them. And that brings us to the next layer of this update, the one that exposes a truth nobody wanted to admit. The Whittakers have lost trust in almost everyone. Not just one creator. Not just one visitor. Not just one outsider. In almost everyone who promised something, filmed something, or claimed to protect them. The update described moments where Betty seemed unsure who was actually helping and who was just talking. It described conversations where she hesitated before answering questions, as if she didn't want to say the wrong thing in case it affected her family's situation. It described her asking whether talking to certain people would cause more problems. And that detail reveals something heartbreaking. Betty now associates help with consequences. And that is something no video ever showed. The update also mentioned that certain family members have started reacting emotionally when filming is brought up. The mere mention of a camera creates discomfort now. Even positive attempts at communication make them anxious, because their experience with creators has been unpredictable and overwhelming. Again, nobody saw this because it wasn't filmed. It was felt. It was spoken privately. And it only came to light through this missed update. The final revelation in part 2 of the update is this. APS is preparing to make a long-term decision soon. Not a temporary placement. Not a week-by-week plan. A long-term, life-shaping decision. And this time, for the first time, APS is factoring in the emotional toll of all the outside involvement. That means the Whittakers' future, together or apart, will be decided not just by their living conditions, but by the influence others have had on their stability. Creators may not realize it, but their actions didn't just affect their audiences, they affected the very agency determining the family's future. And that is the update everyone missed. Comment below. Tell me if you want more focus on APS's internal decision-making, the creators' behind-the-scenes reactions, or how the family is emotionally responding to what's coming next. The update that slipped past everyone didn't just expose APS's shift or the emotional weight pressing on the Whittakers, it revealed something even more unsettling, the growing divide among the people surrounding the family. Not the Whittakers themselves, but the adults who claim to speak for them, protect them, or manage their story. The update described a ripple effect that has quietly transformed into a storm behind the scenes. One portion of the update mentioned that APS workers have been receiving calls, dozens of calls, from individuals claiming to offer insight into the Whittakers' situation. Some of these callers are concerned supporters. Some are creators trying to defend themselves. Some are anonymous tipsters who repeat rumors they've heard online. APS has been forced to filter through all of it, deciding what is relevant and what is noise. And here's the part that stunned people who actually paid attention. APS is forming a timeline. A timeline of who visited the family, who filmed them, who promised what, who received money, who withheld money, who pressured them, and who interfered with their daily lives. They are mapping everything backwards, from the moment the viral videos appeared to the most recent live stream. This timeline isn't about content creation. It's about patterns. Patterns of influence. Patterns of stress. Patterns of escalation. Patterns of emotional disruption. And the update hinted that APS has already identified 3 critical events that may have played a role in their decision to remove Timmy, Ray, and Lorraine when they did. The update didn't list the events by name, but the context made them clear. The first event was tied to a creator who filmed the family extensively without clear boundaries. The update mentioned a period where filming increased dramatically, with multiple visits in a short time frame. APS saw that as overstimulation for the household, especially for adults who relied on routine and calm to function well. The second event involved financial disputes. The update said APS became aware of money that was expected but not delivered, and money that was given but not accounted for. This created confusion within the family and tension between creators, which spilled over onto the Whittakers through comments, calls, and messages they didn't fully understand. The third event was the tipping point, a series of confrontations online, live stream arguments, accusations flying back and forth between creators, and claims that the family was being used or manipulated. APS didn't need to know who was right or wrong. All they saw was that the drama surrounding the family had reached a level where their emotional safety was compromised. This was the part of the update where the tone shifted into something somber. APS now believes that removing the 3 adults temporarily was necessary not only because of the conditions in the home, but because the environment around the home had become too unstable. That realization stings for everyone who's tried to help the family. It stings for creators who acted with good intentions but didn't anticipate the consequences. It stings for supporters who donated time, money, and compassion. And most of all, it stings for the Whittakers, who never asked for any of this. But the update didn't stop there. It revealed a deeper emotional fracture happening inside the family, one that nobody outside would have guessed. The update stated that Ray has been struggling the most with the separation, even though he appears calm in short glimpses. People who have interacted with him say he asks questions that break your heart, questions he doesn't even fully understand. The update said he repeatedly asks if he is in trouble. He asks if Betty is mad. He asks if he can go home now. He asks when he will see the dogs. He asks whether he did something wrong. And because of his limitations, no explanation fully settles his worry. That part of the update was devastating because it revealed something viewers never see: the internal struggle of an adult who thinks like a child, trying to place himself in a situation he cannot comprehend. The update mentioned that staff working with Ray are doing everything they can, but they also said his anxiety spikes at night. His mind loops the same questions over and over, and every answer only holds him for a few minutes. Then there was the part about Lorraine. According to the update, Lorraine has been quieter than usual, not distressed in an outward sense, but withdrawn. She has been responding minimally, and the staff noted she occasionally looks toward the door as if expecting someone. She does not initiate conversation. She does not complain. But she also doesn't seem comfortable. One worker described her current state as lost but trying to cooperate. Another said she seems confused whenever the topic of home comes up. What broke supporters the most was the line that said Lorraine appears to mimic calmness, not feel it. And then there's Timmy. The update described him as experiencing the separation differently, more socially engaged, more responsive, and more expressive than the others. Timmy has moments where he genuinely laughs and interacts with caretakers. He enjoys activities, new foods, and certain routines. But the update made sure to highlight that none of this means he's unaffected. In fact, his emotional reaction comes in waves. The update said the most difficult moments are when he hears certain words like home, Betty, Ray, and dogs. Those words cause him to pause, tilt his head, and fall silent. The staff recognizes those pauses as his way of acknowledging something missing, something he can't articulate. And according to the update, Timmy's emotional shift is what APS is most concerned about. Because while he may appear excited and upbeat at times, he is also showing signs of stress that manifest as hyperactivity and rapid mood swings. APS interprets these as coping mechanisms, not signs of stability. But the part that surprised everyone came near the end of the update. APS is considering allowing a supervised visit soon, not because the environment at home is ready, but because the emotional impact of the separation is becoming too heavy to ignore. That sentence was the small but powerful detail that most people scrolled right past. It confirmed that APS is aware of what the separation is doing to the Whittakers. It confirmed that the issue is not neglect or abuse. It is the overwhelming combination of environmental instability, public interference, and emotional stress. It confirmed that APS is searching for a way to reconnect the family safely, without exposing them to more disruptions. But buried deeper was an even bigger revelation. APS is not just evaluating whether the family can be reunited. They are evaluating whether the family can be protected from future outside influence. And that means something viewers didn't expect. APS is considering long-term restrictions on who can visit, film, or contact the family. That possibility changes everything. If APS decides that creators contributed to the emotional harm, they could bar those creators from contacting the family ever again. They could limit filming. They could prohibit outside involvement. They could require supervised communication. They could even request court orders to prevent further exploitation. This isn't speculation, it was stated clearly in the update. APS is drafting a media influence assessment, something rarely used except in cases where vulnerable adults are thrust into public exposure that becomes harmful. That assessment will determine which creators contributed positively, which creators caused emotional disruption, which creators misled the family, which creators escalated tensions, which creators manipulated situations, and which creators may need to be restricted permanently. This is the update almost nobody paid attention to, but it might shape the Whittakers' future more than anything else. Then came the most unexpected detail. The update said Betty has been told to expect a call soon, one that will outline the next steps regarding visitation. But it also said APS will speak with her about outside influences that may need to be limited moving forward. This is where the emotional weight lands hardest. The update described Betty reacting quietly, absorbing the information without fully understanding it, but clearly sensing that something has changed forever. She reportedly said she just wants her family back, and added that she doesn't care about videos or money or any of it. That may be the most honest statement in the entire saga. Betty never asked for fame. She never asked for money. She never asked for a YouTube audience. She never asked for creators fighting in her name. She never asked for contracts, feuds, or donations. She asked for exactly one thing: her family to be okay. And the update made it clear that she is emotionally exhausted from being pulled into conflicts she did not create and does not understand. Part 3 ends with the realization that the Whittakers' world is not just shaped by APS. It has been shaped by every person who entered their lives since the first viral video. And that impact, whether intended or not, is now a factor in deciding their future. The family is on the edge of a major decision, one that will either reunite them or permanently reshape the way they live. Comment below. Tell me if you want the final section to focus on the APS decision, the emotional reunion, the consequences for creators, or all three woven together. The final portion of the update pulled everything together: APS's investigation, the emotional toll on the family, and the consequences now unfolding for everyone involved. It revealed that APS has reached the internal review stage, meaning they are preparing to make their first major decision since removing Timmy, Ray, and Lorraine. The update said the decision will fall into one of two pathways: either a supervised gradual reunification or a continuation of their current placement until the home environment and external influences stabilize. The surprising part was that APS appears to be leaning toward reunification. Not permanently and not immediately, but in controlled phases. The update emphasized that emotional health has become the priority. APS staff reported that the separation is beginning to cause regression, especially in Ray's anxiety and in Lorraine's withdrawal. Timmy's restlessness and mood swings were also listed as indicators that the separation, once intended to protect them, is now creating its own form of distress. This is why APS is considering supervised visits sooner rather than later. According to the update, the first visit could include one caretaker, 2 APS workers, and possibly a licensed specialist. The visit would be brief but structured, allowing the family to reconnect without chaos or outside interference. APS believes that if the visit goes well, It could lead to a series of visits, each one slightly longer, building toward a potential return home. But there was a second part to APS's plan, one that explains why this update matters so much. APS has now confirmed they will implement restrictions on who may film or contact the family going forward. The update said this is not punishment, it is protection. The Whittakers' life became a battleground for creators, donors, critics, and supporters. APS wants to ensure that never happens again. The restrictions may include a list of approved visitors, a limit on filming or photography, a ban on creators who contributed to stress or misinformation, required documentation for anyone requesting contact, legal consequences for violations. This means that the future of the Whittakers will not be shaped by viewers or creators anymore. It will be shaped by APS, the family, and a small circle of professionals. The final lines of the update focused on Betty. APS acknowledged her cooperation, her fear, and her resilience. They noted that she has remained calm, respectful, and hopeful despite the pressure around her. They said her priority has always been the same: I just want them home. That clarity is why APS is moving towards supervised reconnection. The update ended with a quiet but powerful statement. This family has been overwhelmed, misunderstood, and mismanaged by outsiders for too long. Our goal is to restore stability, dignity, and peace. Whether the family reunites next month or later in the year, one thing is certain: the next chapter will not look like the last. The chaos is ending. The world around them is finally being filtered. And for the first time in a long time, the Whittakers may finally get a chance to live without interference. Comment below. What do you want next? Another update script, a follow-up story, or a deep dive into APS's decision process? Thank you for watching this video. Click here to watch another video that might interest you.